What happens when a calm conversation about career choices suddenly turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments on live television? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So the segment begins like any other morning on The View. The energy is light, the audience is warm, and you can hear that soft buzz of anticipation as the hosts settle into their seats. Whoopi Goldberg opens the segment with her usual steady tone, introducing the guest of the day, Eva Mendes. Whoopi leans slightly forward, smiling. "We're really happy to have you here. It's been a while since we've seen you out doing interviews like this." Eva smiles politely, a little reserved but warm. "Yeah, it has. I've been, focused on family life, different priorities." There's a soft ah from the audience. Joy Behar jumps in, as she often does, with a playful tone. "You mean you've been hiding from us, right?" "That's what that means." The audience laughs. Eva laughs too, shaking her head. No hiding. Just choosing differently." Then Sunny Hostin adds, "And honestly, that's refreshing. You don't hear that a lot in Hollywood. Everything still feels smooth, easy." But then Alyssa Farah Griffin leans in. Her tone is polite, but noticeably more direct. "So I'm curious," Alyssa says, "because a lot of women look up to you. When you step away from your career at the height of it, do you worry about the message that sends?" There's a subtle shift. Eva pauses for just a second. It's small but noticeable. "What do you mean?" she asks, still smiling, but the smile is tighter now. Alyssa continues, "I just mean there's been this long fight for women to have a seat at the table, right? To build careers, to not feel like they have to choose between family and work. And when someone as influential as you says, 'I step back,' I wonder if that complicates that message." You can feel the audience go quiet. Joy shifts in her seat. Sunny glances sideways. Whoopi watches closely. Eva takes a breath. "I don't think choosing your family is stepping back," she says calmly. "I think it's stepping into something." There's a mix of light applause and a few murmurs. Alyssa nods, but doesn't let it go. "Sure, but for a lot of women, they don't have the luxury to step away. So when public figures normalize it, it can feel disconnected from reality." That lands heavier. Eva's expression changes now, still composed, but clearly more serious. "I think what's disconnected is assuming there's only one version of empowerment," she replies. Audience reacts, some applause, some hum. Whoopi steps in slightly, trying to balance the tone. Okay, let's unpack that a little." But Alyssa jumps back in, not aggressively, but firmly. "No, I agree there are different paths, but we also have to acknowledge the influence celebrities have. Young women are watching." Eva nods slowly. "And what they should see," she says, "is that they have a choice." The audience claps louder this time. Sunny smiles, clearly supportive. That's a powerful point. But Alyssa isn't backing off. But is it really a free choice if the narrative still leans heavily toward women sacrificing careers for family? That's been the default for decades. Now the tension is real. Eva leans forward slightly. "I didn't sacrifice anything," she says. Her voice is still calm, but there's an edge now. "That's what I'm trying to explain." The audience goes quiet again. Joy raises her eyebrows, sensing where this is heading. Eva continues, "I made a decision based on what fulfilled me. That's not a loss. That's not me giving something up. That's me choosing something else." Alyssa responds quickly, "But isn't that easier to say when you've already achieved massive success?" A few oohs ripple through the audience. Whoopi immediately lifts a hand. "All right, let's." But Eva speaks before she can redirect. "Success doesn't define whether your choices are valid," Eva says, looking directly at Alyssa now. "That's kind of the problem with the conversation." Sunny nods again, visibly agreeing. "That's fair." But Alyssa presses on, her tone still controlled but sharper now. "I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm saying it's not universally relatable." Joy lets out a quiet, "Oh boy," under her breath. Eva tilts her head slightly. "It's not supposed to be universally relatable. It's supposed to be personal." The audience claps again, louder this time. You can feel the divide forming, not just at the table, but in the room. Whoopi leans back, watching both of them carefully. "This is why we have these conversations," she says. "Because there's no one answer." But Alyssa isn't finished. "I just think we need to be careful about framing," she says. "Because for a long time, women didn't have the option to choose. And now that they do, the messaging matters." Eva nods slowly, but her expression is firm. "And the message should be, do what's right for you, not what looks right to everyone else." There's a strong wave of applause now. Sunny adds, "That's the core of feminism, isn't it? Choice. Alyssa responds quickly. Yes, but informed choice. Context matters. Now multiple voices start overlapping slightly. Joy jumps in, half laughing but trying to ease the tension. Okay, now we're getting into a full debate here. The audience laughs, but the tension doesn't fully break. Eva looks back at Alyssa. I understand your point, she says more softly now. I really do. But I also think we need to stop judging women's choices through a lens of what they represent instead of what they mean to them. That line hits. The audience claps again, this time more unified. Alyssa pauses for the first time, considering it. Whoopi takes the opportunity. All right, we're going to take a quick break, she says, her tone calm but decisive. But clearly, this conversation isn't over. The camera pulls back slightly as the audience continues reacting. Some clapping, some whispering, some clearly processing what just unfolded. As the show cuts to break, you can see the hosts still talking quietly among themselves and Eva sitting composed, but no longer just a guest, now fully part of a live, unfolding debate that just got very real. The camera comes back from break, and you can immediately feel that the energy in the room hasn't reset. It's still there, lingering. Whoopi sits forward slightly, her hands folded. All right, we're back, she says, her tone measured. And before the break, we were having a very real conversation. A few chuckles from the audience, but it's nervous laughter. Eva Mendes sits composed, her posture straight, hands resting calmly in her lap. Alyssa Farah Griffin is already leaning slightly toward the table, clearly ready to continue. Sunny Hostin looks thoughtful, while Joy Behar has that half smile that usually means she's about to say something blunt. Whoopi turns to Eva. I want to give you a chance to finish your thought, because I think you were getting at something important. Eva nods. Yeah, I just think that sometimes, when we talk about women's choices, we turn them into statements for society instead of recognizing them as personal decisions. There's soft applause. Alyssa jumps in quickly, but not aggressively, more like she's trying to clarify. And I hear that, I really do. But the reality is, when you're in the public eye, your personal choices do become part of a larger conversation. That's just the reality of influence. Eva looks at her, calm but firm. But should they? She asks. That question hangs for a second. The audience murmurs again. Alyssa responds, I think whether they should or not, they do. And I think there's a responsibility that comes with that. Joy leans in, eyebrows raised. So what are you saying? That she should have stayed in movies just to send a message? Alyssa shakes her head. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the messaging around it matters. It's not about telling her what to do. It's about how it's framed publicly. Sunny adds, but who controls that framing? Because often it's not even the person, it's the media, the headlines, the narrative built around them. The audience reacts with a few, that's true murmurs. Eva nods in agreement. Exactly. I didn't come out and say, this is what all women should do. I spoke about my life. That's it. Alyssa leans back slightly, but she's still engaged. But when that message gets amplified, it can unintentionally reinforce traditional roles. Now the tension starts creeping back. Eva tilts her head slightly, her tone still calm but more pointed now. So what would you prefer? That I don't speak honestly about my life because it might fit into someone else's narrative? Alyssa pauses for half a second. No, I'd prefer that we acknowledge the broader context when we do. Joy lets out a small laugh. This is starting to sound like a PR strategy meeting. The audience laughs, breaking the tension just a bit. Whoopi smiles slightly, but keeps things on track. No, but it's a fair discussion. Because this comes up a lot, not just with Eva, but with a lot of women in the spotlight. Sunny nods. Especially mothers. There's always this added layer of judgment. Eva looks toward Sunny, clearly appreciative. Yes, and it goes both ways. If you work, you're judged. If you stay home, you're judged. There's no winning. The audience claps, louder this time, more unified. Alyssa nods slowly. I agree with that. There is judgment either way. But I think part of the reason people push back is because historically, women didn't have equal access to careers. So there's a sensitivity around anything that feels like a step backward. Eva responds immediately. But it's not a step backward if it's a choice. Alyssa replies, it depends on how it's perceived. Eva's expression tightens slightly. That's exactly my point. Why are we prioritizing perception over reality? The audience reacts again, this time a mix of applause and surprised murmurs. Joy leans back, smiling like she's watching a tennis match. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Whoopi raises her hand slightly. Let's not turn this into a battle. But Sunny gently interrupts. No, I think it's important. Because this is the conversation women are having every day. She turns to Alyssa. I get what you're saying about historical context. But I also think we can't project that onto every individual decision. Alyssa nods. I'm not trying to project. I'm trying to acknowledge that these conversations don't happen in a vacuum. Eva leans in slightly now, matching Alyssa's energy for the first time. And I'm saying that when we constantly frame women's personal choices as part of a larger social debate, we take away the individuality of those choices. That lands. The audience claps again, more strongly. Alyssa doesn't interrupt this time. She listens, then responds more slowly. But isn't that the nature of public discourse? We take individual stories and connect them to larger themes. Eva shakes her head gently. There's a difference between connecting and redefining. Joy raises a finger. That's a good line. The audience laughs and claps. Whoopi nods. That is a good line. But Alyssa still isn't fully convinced. I just think there's a balance. You can share your personal story while also acknowledging how it might be interpreted. Eva looks directly at her. But why is that my responsibility more than anyone else's? That question shifts the room again. Sunny leans in. That's interesting. Alyssa answers, because you have a platform. And with that comes influence. Eva responds, her voice steady but more emotional now. And with that platform, I chose to be honest. Not strategic. Not calculated. Honest. The audience applauds again. Joy nods. And honestly, that's what people say they want, until they don't like what they hear. More laughter from the audience. Whoopi smiles slightly but keeps her eyes on Eva. Let me ask you this. Did you expect this kind of reaction when you talked about stepping away? Eva exhales softly. No, I didn't. I thought I was just sharing my experience. I didn't realize it would turn into this whole debate about what it means. Alyssa softens slightly at that. And I don't think anyone's trying to attack you personally. Eva nods. I know, but it does feel like sometimes women are put in a position where they have to justify their happiness. That line hits hard. The audience goes quiet for a moment, then applause builds. Sunny nods firmly. That's very true. Alyssa pauses, clearly considering that. I don't think you should have to justify your happiness, she says. I just think public conversations come with layers. Eva responds gently but firmly. Then maybe we need to rethink how we have those conversations. There's a moment of silence. Even Joy doesn't jump in this time. Whoopi looks between them, then out to the audience. And that, she says, is why this isn't a simple topic. The audience applauds again. This time not for one side or the other, but for the conversation itself. But even as the applause continues, you can still feel it. This isn't resolved. Not even close. The applause fades, but the tension doesn't fully leave the table. You can see it in the way everyone is sitting now, more alert, more careful, but also more invested. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice calm but intentional. You know, what's interesting about this conversation is that it's not really about one choice. It's about what we expect from women when they make those choices. Joy nods immediately. Exactly. Because nobody ever asks men to explain why they keep working or why they don't. The audience reacts with a mix of laughter and applause. Sunny adds, that's a big part of it. The scrutiny is different. Alyssa shifts slightly in her chair, taking that in, but she's not stepping away from her position. I agree the scrutiny is different, she says. But I also think we're in a moment where women's choices are being examined more closely because they matter more in the broader cultural conversation. Eva looks at her, her expression steady, but clearly more emotionally engaged now. But they've always mattered, she says. It's just that now they're being debated in a way that feels exhausting. There's a quiet murmur of agreement from the audience. Whoopi nods slowly. That's a word we hear a lot, exhausting. Eva lets out a small breath, almost a half laugh. Because it is. It feels like no matter what you do, you're either setting a good example or a bad one. And that's a lot to carry for just living your life. The audience claps again, more sympathetically this time. Alyssa leans in, her tone a bit softer now, but still firm. I don't think it's about labeling choices as good or bad, she says. I think it's about understanding impact. Eva responds quickly, but not sharply, more like she's been holding this in. But impact according to who? That question lands again. Sunny nods, almost under her breath. That's the question. Alyssa answers, society, culture, the people who are influenced by public figures. Eva gently interrupts this time. Not loudly, but enough to shift the rhythm. But society isn't one voice, she says. It's millions of different perspectives. So why do we act like there's one correct way to interpret someone's life? The audience reacts with a mix of applause and thoughtful silence. Joy leans back, smiling slightly. I mean, she's not wrong. Whoopi raises a hand, keeping things balanced. No, she's not. But I also understand what Alyssa's saying, because we've all seen how narratives get shaped. Sunny adds, and sometimes those narratives are completely out of the control of the person they're about. Eva nods. Exactly. So why am I being asked to take responsibility for something I didn't create? Alyssa responds, because even if you didn't create it, you're part of it. Eva's expression tightens just a bit. That feels unfair. There's a pause. The audience is quiet again, listening closely. Alyssa continues, her tone still composed. It might be unfair, but that's the reality of being a public figure. Eva leans back slightly, taking that in, then shakes her head gently. But that's exactly what I stepped away from, she says. That constant pressure to represent something bigger than myself. That line shifts the energy again. Sunny looks at her with understanding. That makes sense. Joy nods. Yeah, that sounds like burnout to me. A few laughs from the audience, but they're softer now. Whoopi looks at Eva more closely. Was that part of the reason? The pressure? Eva hesitates for a moment, then answers honestly. Yeah, it was part of it. I loved what I did, but I didn't love what came with it. The expectations, the constant analysis, it just didn't feel healthy for me anymore. The audience reacts with quiet empathy, some nodding, some soft clapping. Alyssa listens carefully this time before responding. I can understand that, she says. I really can. But I also think there are women who look at you and think, she made it, and then she left. And that can feel discouraging. Eva looks at her, not defensive, but clearly not agreeing either. Or, she says, it could feel empowering to see someone choose a different path. That contrast hangs in the air. Sunny leans in. That's the duality of it. One person sees discouragement, another sees freedom. Joy adds, and both can be true at the same time. Whoopi nods. That's life. But Alyssa isn't fully letting go. I just think we can't ignore how powerful representation is, she says. Especially in industries where women have fought so hard to be taken seriously. Eva responds, her tone still calm but more grounded now. And I respect that fight. I really do. But I don't think honoring that fight means every woman has to make the same choices. The audience applauds again, steady and supportive. Alyssa nods slowly, acknowledging the point. That's fair. But I think part of progress is visibility, seeing women succeed and stay in those spaces. Eva answers, and part of progress is also seeing women walk away from those spaces if they want to. That line hits strong. The audience reacts loudly, applause, a few cheers. Joy points slightly toward Eva. That's a mic drop moment right there. Even Whoopi smiles a little at that. But Alyssa, while smiling faintly, still looks thoughtful. I think we're talking about two sides of the same coin, she says. You're talking about personal freedom, and I'm talking about collective progress. Sunny nods. That's actually a really good way to put it. Eva considers that for a moment. Maybe, she says. But I don't think they should be in conflict. Alyssa responds. Ideally, they wouldn't be. But sometimes they are. Eva looks directly at her again. Only if we make them that way. There's a brief silence. The kind where no one jumps in right away. The audience is quiet too, waiting. Whoopi finally breaks it. You know what I think, she says, leaning back slightly. I think both of you are right, and that's why this conversation is so complicated. A few nods around the table. Joy laughs softly. That's the diplomatic answer. Whoopi shrugs. Hey, sometimes that's the only answer. The audience laughs, easing the tension just a little. But even with that moment of lightness, the weight of the conversation is still there. Eva sits calmly, but you can tell she's fully engaged now. Not just answering questions, but standing her ground. Alyssa sits back slightly, thoughtful, but still clearly holding on to her perspective. Sunny looks between them, reflective. Joy looks entertained, but also aware of the depth of what just unfolded. And Whoopi, she watches it all, knowing this is exactly the kind of conversation that doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. The energy at the table settles into something quieter now, not resolved, but more reflective. You can feel that everyone knows the conversation has gone deeper than expected. Whoopi folds her hands on the table, looking out at the audience for a moment before turning back. You know, she says, This is one of those conversations that doesn't really have a clean ending. Joy nods. Yeah, nobody's storming off, nobody's flipping a table, but it's still intense. The audience laughs softly, the tension easing just a bit. Sunny leans forward. I think what makes it intense is that it's personal for so many people watching. Every woman has had to make some version of this decision, or at least think about it. Eva nods slowly. Exactly. And that's why I think it's important to let those decisions be personal. Alyssa looks at her, calmer now than before. And I respect that, she says. I really do. I think where I was coming from is just wanting to make sure we don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Eva gives a small, understanding smile. And I think the bigger picture includes individual happiness too. There's a soft wave of applause. Whoopi nods. All right, that's a fair place to land for now. She glances toward the camera. Because like I said, this isn't over. Not here, not anywhere. Joy chuckles. Oh, it's definitely not over online. That gets a bigger laugh from the audience. Sunny adds, yeah, social media is probably already having a field day with this. The audience reacts with knowing laughter. Whoopi turns back to Eva. Before we wrap, I just want to say, thank you for being open. Because it's not easy to sit here and have your life choices picked apart in real time. Eva exhales softly but smiles. Thank you for letting me speak honestly. Alyssa nods toward her. And I appreciate you engaging with me on it. Seriously. Eva returns the nod. Of course. There's a moment of mutual respect there, not agreement, but understanding. Whoopi claps her hands lightly. All right, we're going to leave it there. The audience applauds, loud, sustained, but not explosive. It's the kind of applause that feels thoughtful, like people are still processing. As the cameras begin to pull back, you can see the hosts turning slightly toward each other, still talking quietly. Eva leans in to say something to Sunny, and Alyssa adjusts her notes, glancing down for a moment before looking back up. The show fades out, but the conversation doesn't. Within minutes, clips from The View start circulating online. Short segments of the exchange, Eva saying, I didn't sacrifice anything, Alyssa asking about the message it sends, begin appearing across platforms. On Twitter, hashtags start trending. Some users praise Eva Mendes for standing her ground, calling her perspective refreshing and real. Others side with Alyssa Farah Griffin, arguing that her points about influence and representation are important. Clips get shared again and again, each time with a different caption, a different angle, a different interpretation. On Instagram, short video edits appear, some highlighting Eva's calm responses, others focusing on the moments where the tension peaked. Comment sections fill up quickly, with people debating, agreeing, disagreeing, and sharing their own experiences. Some viewers say, this is exactly why women feel pressured no matter what they do. Others write, both of them had valid points. And some simply say, this is the most real conversation I've seen on TV in a while. By the afternoon, media outlets begin picking it up. Headlines frame it differently depending on the angle. Some call it a clash, others call it a powerful debate. Backstage, after the show, things are noticeably calmer. Eva is seen talking briefly with Sunny, the two of them smiling. The intensity of the on-air moment softened into something more personal. Alyssa speaks with producers, then later exchanges a few words with Eva. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, respectful interaction. No raised voices. No lingering hostility. Just two people who disagreed, and said it out loud. Whoopi, walking past, puts a hand lightly on Eva's shoulder and says something that makes her smile. Joy is heard joking with someone off camera, already moving on to the next topic of the day. And that's how it ends, not with a resolution, but with a conversation that continues beyond the set. Because for viewers, it doesn't just stay on the screen. It becomes something they think about later, something they talk about with friends, something they bring into their own lives and decisions. And that's what made this moment different. It wasn't loud for the sake of being loud. It was real. And now we want to hear from you. Do you agree more with Eva's perspective or Alyssa's? Was this about personal choice or public responsibility? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.